If you're over 50 and you've accepted broken sleep as just part of getting older, you've been given the wrong information. Decades before melatonin pills existed, farm families across Michigan had already solved this: a single glass of tart cherry juice before bed. Researchers have since confirmed why it works and why it outperforms every pharmaceutical sleep aid on the market. Here's what they found. Number 4. The melatonin delivery problem. Before the supplement industry industrialized sleep, people who slept well in older age were not doing so because of genetics or discipline. They were sleeping well because of food. Specifically, because certain foods common in pre-industrial diets contained naturally occurring melatonin in a biological matrix the human body had co-evolved with over thousands of years. Here is the problem with synthetic melatonin that no supplement label will tell you. Melatonin is not a sedative. It is a timing signal, a hormonal cue that tells your brain the light cycle has ended and that conditions for sleep onset are present. After 50, pineal gland melatonin output declines by approximately 50% compared to peak production levels. This is why sleep onset becomes harder, nighttime waking becomes more frequent, and the deep slow-wave sleep stages that govern physical recovery and cognitive consolidation become shorter and shallower with each passing decade. Synthetic melatonin supplements address this decline by delivering doses of 1 to 10 milligrams, frequently 10 to 100 times higher than what the pineal gland ever produces naturally. This pharmacological excess initiates drowsiness in many users, but at the cost of suppressing the body's remaining natural melatonin production over time, creating a dependency that leaves users sleeping worse without the pill than they did before they started taking it. Tart cherry juice works differently. Montmorency cherries contain naturally occurring melatonin in concentrations physiologically compatible with the body's own production range rather than pharmacologically excessive. Researchers at Northumbria University demonstrated in a controlled clinical trial that adults who consumed tart cherry juice concentrate twice daily showed significant increases in urinary melatonin metabolites alongside measurable improvements in total sleep time and sleep efficiency compared to placebo. Within the first 72 hours of your evening tart cherry habit, the melatonin signaling environment in your brain begins shifting toward the hormonal conditions that reliable sleep onset requires. The transition from wakefulness to drowsiness in the evening feels slightly less effortful than it has been. That is the melatonin signal beginning to function at a level your pineal gland has not been producing independently for years. 1 tablespoon of Montmorency tart cherry, concentrate in a small glass of water 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Do not substitute sweet cherry juice. The variety is the mechanism. Number 3. The inflammation sleep cycle. Rural physicians in the early 20th century noticed that older adults in agricultural communities who ate seasonally, including regular consumption of stone fruits like cherries, reported significantly fewer complaints of nighttime pain, restless sleep, and the early morning waking that was becoming a common pattern in aging urban patients. These physicians attributed it broadly to rural lifestyle. The mechanism they could not isolate was operating specifically at the level of inflammatory signaling during the sleep cycle itself. Sleep and inflammation are not parallel processes that occasionally intersect. They are deeply and reciprocally linked. Elevated systemic inflammation directly disrupts sleep architecture by activating the same neurological arousal pathways that stress and pain use to pull the brain out of deep sleep stages. In adults over 50, chronic low-grade inflammation is nearly universal due to accumulated oxidative stress and the natural decline of antioxidant enzyme efficiency with age. This inflammatory state is one of the primary biological drivers of the fragmented, shallow, unrestorative sleep that adults over 50 experience and frequently mistake for an inevitable feature of aging rather than a nutritional state that responds to intervention. Montmorency tart cherries contain the highest anthocyanin concentration of any commercially available cherry variety. These anthocyanins are potent inhibitors of cyclooxygenase enzymes, the same enzymatic pathway that pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory medications target, but without the gastrointestinal damage, cardiovascular risk, and sleep disruption that chronic NSAID use produces in older adults. Researchers at Oregon Health and Science University demonstrated that adults who consumed tart cherry juice for 14 days showed significant reductions in circulating inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein compared to placebo, and that these reductions correlated directly with improvements in reported sleep quality and reductions in nighttime waking frequency. By days 7 to 10, the nighttime joint discomfort and background physical restlessness that has been pulling you out of deep sleep begins to quiet. You stay in deeper sleep stages longer. You wake less frequently in the 2 to 4 a.m. window that inflammatory arousal characteristically targets. The sleep you get begins to feel different in quality, not just duration, because the inflammatory interference fragmenting it is being biochemically reduced for the first time in years. Number 2, the tryptophan pathway nobody mentions. The farm families who drank tart cherry juice before bed were not thinking about neurotransmitters. But the reason the ritual worked extended well beyond melatonin content. It extended into a second biochemical pathway that operates on a longer timeline and produces sleep. Improvements of a fundamentally different character. Tryptophan is the sole dietary amino acid precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is the sole precursor to melatonin. Your body's capacity to produce its own melatonin depends entirely on dietary tryptophan availability processed through a conversion cascade that takes 6 to 8 hours to complete from ingestion to active melatonin in the brain. Tart cherry juice contains meaningful tryptophan concentrations alongside its direct melatonin content. More importantly, its anthocyanins inhibit an enzyme called indoleamin 2,3-dioxygenase. The enzyme responsible for diverting tryptophan away from the serotonin-melatonin pathway and toward an inflammatory metabolite pathway instead. In adults over 50, chronic inflammation chronically upregulates this enzyme, meaning a growing proportion of dietary tryptophan is being redirected away from sleep-supporting neurotransmitter production without the person consuming it having any awareness this diversion is occurring. Researchers at Louisiana State University demonstrated in 2014 that adults over 50 who consumed tart cherry juice for 2 weeks showed significant increases in tryptophan availability, not just from direct dietary delivery, but from the anthocyanin-mediated reduction in tryptophan diversion. The result was a measurable increase in the body's own endogenous melatonin production, independent of the direct melatonin content of the juice itself. By days 11 to 17, your own pineal gland is producing more melatonin than it has in years because the inflammatory enzyme stealing your tryptophan has been biochemically inhibited. The sleep that returns in this window is not the sedated, cognitively blunted sleep of pharmaceutical aids. It is the deep, architecturally intact sleep of a nervous system restored closer to its natural hormonal operating state. Number 1. The 21-day verdict. Here is the honest account of what 21 days of this protocol actually delivers, stated without exaggeration. You will not resolve a lifetime of sleep disruption in 3 weeks. Full circadian rhythm normalization and complete restoration of sleep architecture require months of consistent input. Anyone promising total sleep transformation in 21 days is describing the placebo effect dressed in clinical language. What 21 days actually delivers is 4 measurable shifts. The first shift is melatonin signaling restoration. 3 weeks of consistent evening tart cherry consumption establishes a measurably elevated melatonin environment through both direct delivery and tryptophan pathway support. Sleep onset is faster. Researchers at Northumbria University documented an average increase of 34 minutes in total sleep time in adults consuming tart cherry concentrate over 2 weeks, a clinically meaningful improvement that sleep hygiene interventions alone do not consistently produce. The second shift is inflammatory sleep interference reduction. 3 weeks of anthocyanin delivery has reduced the systemic inflammatory markers activating neurological arousal during deep sleep. Nighttime waking frequency has reduced. The 2 to 4 a.m. window that was reliably pulling you into full wakefulness has quieted. The sleep you are getting is architecturally deeper. The third shift is daytime cognitive clarity. Deep sleep is when the brain's glymphatic system flushes metabolic waste, including amyloid beta proteins from neural tissue. When deep sleep is chronically fragmented, this clearance is incomplete, producing the brain fog and processing slowness that adults over 50 accept as cognitive aging rather than recognizing as the downstream consequence of degraded sleep architecture. 3 weeks of improved sleep depth produces measurable daytime cognitive improvement that has nothing to do with caffeine.